A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to the program Galaxy Prime. Thank you for those of us who are joining us on channel 500 on StarSat on Galaxy Universal Network. To all our viewers across the continent, it's just gone after 6 p.m. Central African time. My name is Audrey Chimwanda Twala. We bring you stories from South Africa and from across the continent. So we hope you will stay with us throughout the course of this bulletin. We'll start with a story from Zimbabwe. Special envoys sent by the South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa in response to the crisis in neighboring Zimbabwe cancelled their meeting with the opposition after they met with President Emmerson Mnangagwa. The two envoys were sent last week after Zimbabwe's government suppressed protests. They arrested dozens of activists and opposition politicians. Joining me via Zoom live from Zimbabwe in Harare is the MDC Alliance Vice President, Mr. Tendai Biti. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening to your viewers and listeners.
Quite interesting developments that happened there with the SA envoy. A lot of people had a lot of hope that perhaps when the envoy comes, they'll come and help to mediate the political crisis that is happening in Zimbabwe. Of course, other analysts are saying that the envoys that were sent were compromised or are compromised and cannot give a credible process to the mediation that is required in Zimbabwe. We saw that they were not able to meet with the opposition, such as yourselves, that are a key component to this crisis that is happening in Zimbabwe. Your comments?
Well, we understand that the reason why they were unable to see us is because of the blockade that was in fact put by Emmerson Mnangagwa, who we are told threw in tantrums and made the point that there was no crisis in Zimbabwe, there were no challenges in Zimbabwe, and therefore the intervention of the two envoys from President Ramaphosa was unnecessary. But that's a very dishonest position by Emmerson. Zimbabwe is burning, Zimbabwe is in a crisis, there's human rights abuse, collapse of political space, torture, abuse, rape, there is arrest of political opponents, including a journalist, Hopo Chingono, Mututisi Matutu, just to name a few. So we are back to square zero, where we were in 2008, where we were in 1988-81, and now things can go on like this. Ordinary Zimbabweans are suffering. Millions have fled into the region, with over 5 million Zimbabweans in the diaspora, and it's not good enough. We need the restoration of the social contract in Zimbabwe. We need the restoration of normalcy.
So 2 years after the elections that installed President Emmerson Mnangagwa as the president of Zimbabwe, your position as the opposition party has always been the issue of legitimacy. Do you think perhaps it's time to move away from that and deal with the bread and butter issues that Zimbabweans are crying out for? Or are you still hung on that situation of legitimacy?
Yeah, look, you know, the legitimacy doesn't start in 2018. Legitimacy starts with unanswered questions around the 2017 military coup. We as Zimbabweans did not respond to that military coup and make the point that the military should go back to the barracks. So you now have a situation where the country, for all intents and purposes, has been taken over by the military. It's now a securocratic state. So the issue of legitimacy on a broader jurisprudential matrix is an issue. The military must go back to the barracks and allow an elected civilian authority to run the country without interference. You've got another legitimacy, the lack of output legitimacy, the lack of performance legitimacy. Emmerson Mnangagwa and his people have failed. 95% of Zimbabweans are unemployed. As I'm talking to you right now, 79% of Zimbabweans are living in extreme poverty, surviving on less than US 35 cents a day. So this government has failed to deliver. Look at inflation. We now have the second highest rate of inflation in the world. Look at our exchange rates. The exchange rate has all but collapsed. So you have got a political legitimacy, you've got performance legitimacy, and Emmerson lacks both. So the issue of legitimacy will always be with us until we have a government not only elected by the people for the people, but a government that actually serves the people of Zimbabwe. And regrettably, we haven't yet such a government in the last 40 years of Zimbabwe's history.
The issue of protesting, Mr. Biti, we see quite a bit of online social media hashtags, Zimbabwean Lives Matter. Do you think it will bring about any kind of change that is required in Zimbabwe as you speak of all these deficiencies that the people of Zimbabweans are experiencing at the moment? Is that enough? Is the opposition really stepping up to the game and putting the government or the ruling party to task to make sure that these reforms are actually implemented?
Look, where we are right now, the crisis is beyond any organization. It's for all Zimbabweans. The situation in Zimbabwe is not a bilateral one. It's not MDC versus ZANU-PF. Just like the apartheid regime was not ANC versus the National Party. It required all black people, it required all oppressed people to fight. This is exactly the same situation in Zimbabwe. So the political party, the MDC alliance, will play its role, a leading role. But every other Zimbabwean should also and will also play his role. That's why the movement Zimbabwe Lives Matter is so key, because it is bringing all of us together. The church, the business, the labor movement, the student movement, the peasants, and so forth. And Africans across the length and breadth of the continent have understood that. Black people across the globe have understood that. Progressive democratic people across the globe have understood that. Zimbabwe has been so vandalized by a group of men and women, and it is going to take more than the efforts of a single Zimbabwean to remove this. We as Zimbabweans must play our part. We, the leadership of the MDC Alliance, must play our part. But so too, outside forces. We require solidarity. We require external refereeing and external assistance. It is a crisis, and a crisis of this century.
And the solidarity of such parties as the African National Congress, the South African officials that were sent to Zimbabwe, Baleka Mbete, Ngwako Ramatlodi, Sydney Mufamadi, are said to be compromised. What are your thoughts around such criticism?
Look, we are not party of a narrative that seeks to discredit the messengers that President Ramaphosa sent to Zimbabwe. We are not part of that narrative because it's a false narrative. The real issue here, we must look at processes. Is the process that has been commenced by President Ramaphosa, is it going to be done in such a manner that it has the buy-in of the African Union and SADC? Number two, is it going to be presided over by a mutually acceptable mediator or facilitator? Number three, is it a process that is going to genuinely tackle the genuine issues affecting our country, which includes, as I've said before, the challenge, for instance, of the rise of the security-cratic state, the challenge, for instance, of state capture, the challenge of lack of reforms, because we don't want to make the mistakes that we made in 2007, 2008 around the GNU, the Government of National Unity. If that process meets these tests that I've spoken of, it doesn't matter who is there on the table. We want delivery. We want our salvation, because our people have suffered for too long. So we will not be detained or seduced by a debate that lands us in a forest, and not a debate that addresses the fundamental challenges facing our country.
So I hear you saying these are bread and butter issues of Zimbabweans that are non-partisan. It's not a ZANU-PF issue. It's not an MDC issue. You also say that you assume the failure to meet the MDC Alliance delegation was a result of demands made by the ZANU-PF delegation. What hope is there going forward that any kind of mediation from the community, the SADC community, the African Union going forward, will be able to yield any results? And if not, what strategy would you take going forward?
The foolishness of ZANU-PF and Emmerson Mnangagwa is the failure to understand that the Zimbabwean situation is now beyond their hands. It has been globalized, it has been Africanized. And it's something that President Mugabe did not understand in 2007. Remember, in 2007, SADC appointed President Mbeki to be the facilitator at a summit that was held, an extraordinary summit of SADC that was held in Dar es Salaam on the 29th of March 2007. On the 14th of April 2007, we went to South Africa and waited for Patrick Chinamasa and ZANU-PF delegates. They didn't pitch up, but SADC just stepped its feet on the ground and said to ZANU-PF, we are not going to allow an unstable Zimbabwe which can implode and have a multiplier effect on the region. Emmerson doesn't understand that. Emmerson doesn't understand that he is naked. Emmerson doesn't understand that, unlike Robert Mugabe, he doesn't have any political capital at all. And many heads of state see him as a thug, see him as a brigand. So these gimmicks and funny games by Emmerson Mnangagwa, Zimbabweans will rain in on him, the region will rain in on him, Cyril will rain in on him. So he's on his own. But it's foolishness, which unfortunately for him is short-term and temporary.
Well, thank you for speaking to us, Mr. Tendai Biti, the Vice President of the MDC Alliance, speaking to us live from Harare. With regards to the special envoy from South Africa that failed to meet with the Zim opposition as had been planned, they had been told to get ready for the meeting, but apparently at the last minute, the envoy from South Africa left without meeting the opposition. Moving on to our next story now, Dessa van Rooyen, the minister with the shortest stint at the National Treasury, opened his testimony at the state capture inquiry with a 20-minute political speech. Van Rooyen requested that the Commission expand its terms of reference to look into the influence of white monopoly capital on South African democratic states. He said that it was worrisome that everyone associated with former President Jacob Zuma was painted as corrupt. Van Rooyen said a state capture commission with the extended terms of reference would reveal that it was white monopoly capital that had captured the state. An example provided, which he believed gave credence to this, was that many officials who work for the National Treasury are absorbed by the corporate SA when they leave the government. Van Rooyen said that white monopoly capital, which he claimed influenced the outcome of the ANC's Nasrec conference in 2017, was having a free ride. In our next story now, the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria has reviewed and set aside findings made by advocate Terry Mutau and Werksman's attorneys against ANC Limpopo Treasurer Danny Msiza. On Tuesday, the court ruled that Mutau's failure to afford Msiza the right to procedural fairness before he released the report on the VBS was unlawful, unconstitutional, and violated his constitutional rights. In the VBS report titled The Great Bank Heist, Msiza was alleged to have used his political influence to convince mayors and municipal officials from at least 10 Limpopo municipalities to invest hundreds of millions of rands in the now collapsed bank. The ANC Limpopo Treasurer General Danny stepped down from his position after the court papers were filed showing how he personally benefited from wide-scale fraud at the VBS Mutual Bank. This comes in the wake of a resolution taken by the party's National Working Committee confirming its Integrity Committee's report, which recommended that Msiza should vacate the position. Well, the city of Tshwane will be embarking on a 20-day testing and screening campaign in a bid to curb COVID-19 infections. As part of the ward-based outreach campaign, the screening and testing will be done every day from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for 20 days. The city will also be extending the campaign to Gomora Informal Settlement near the Hercules from tomorrow, as well as WF Nkomo Village Mall, that is near Southville, from Thursday. The last venue for the city's awareness and testing efforts will be along Helen Joseph Street from Monday. Tshwane Head Administrator Mpho Nawa said the COVID-19 operational plan was aimed at raising awareness about the pandemic as well as to test and to screen as many people as possible across the 7 affected regions of Tshwane. He further said that so far the city had conducted screening and testing in most of the identified hotspots in all of its 7 regions and would continue to revisit some of the areas as and when the need arises. Now, the latest statistics released by the Gauteng Department of Health indicate that the city has the 2nd highest number of active cases in the province. It has surpassed only by the city of Johannesburg. As of Sunday, the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the province stood at over 190,000, with over 140,000 cases of recoveries. There have been 2,579 deaths. Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola has appointed 29 regional magistrates across the country. His spokesperson, Crispin Phiri, said the appointments take effect from the 1st of September. He said the minister appoints magistrates in respect of the lower courts after consultation with the Magistrates Commission. Phiri further said the Magistrates Commission play a central role in the process, that is, comprising vacancies which were identified and confirmed against the judicial establishment and funded posts. The steps included advertisements, applications, shortlisting and interviews before the recommendations were made by the Commission to Lamola for his consideration and appointment. They say a fully transformed judiciary is a constitutional imperative. The appointments will further enhance diversity in the courts in terms of both race and gender, with 58% of the appointments being women, that's 17 women and 12 men of African descent, and 29 appointments, 22 were African and 2 are coloured, 1 Indian and 4 white. Now, the appointments come a week after the reports that there's more than half of provincial magistrates that are working in the lower courts and they feared for their lives. They suffered from stress and they were complaining about the heavy workloads. We go to Eskom now, where the appointment of a white treasurer at South Africa's debt-ridden power monopoly has become mired in allegations of racism, deepening a political dispute between a rebel-rousing opposition party and a cabinet minister. Mandla Maleka, acting treasurer of Eskom Holdings for 8 months, has been the acting treasurer for Eskom for 8 months and an employee for more than 2 decades, filed a grievance against the company after being passed over. The post went to Richard Vaughan, the former chief financial officer of bankrupt retailer Edcom Holdings Limited. In the documents, Maleka, who is black, questioned why the finalists were 2 middle-aged white men. Eskom confirming Maleka's grievance says that an independent lawyer engaged by the company found his claim to have no substance. The grievance is still being dealt with internally. However, Maleka cited his successful raising of 27 billion rand from commercial banks, the Chinese Development Bank and the Public Investment Corp, as evidence of his qualifications. Race is a particularly sensitive issue in South Africa because of decades of apartheid that ended in 1994, set back the black majority and largely locked them out of the economy. Even today, the CEOs of most large South African companies are white. Eskom CEO and Chief Operating Officer are white, and the Chief Financial Officer is of Asian ancestry. Looking further afield now, we go to Kenya, where the Kenya Power is set to renegotiate contracts that it has with electricity producers. This is a move that would result in lower power bills for consumers if successful. The power distributor is looking to depart from the current take-or-pay regime, whereby it pays the power producers whether they supply electricity or not. The money runs into billions of shillings every year, with electricity generators in many instances earning more from capacity charges than the power supplied to the electricity grid. The charges are usually passed on to the consumers. Many of the power purchase agreements that Kenya Power signed with the electricity generators are capacity-based. They require the utility of firms to pay the producers as long as their plants are available. This is regardless of whether they are feeding the electricity grid with power or are idle, guaranteeing returns for investors even when they supply nothing. Kenya Power is set to start talks with the power producers with a view of reviewing these contracts and getting rid of the capacity-based payments. In the place, payments will be based on the amount of power supplied to Kenya Power for resale to consumers, and if successful, this could hand a lifeline to Kenya Power, which is currently experiencing financial difficulties, besides offering much needed relief to the consumers. The power producers are likely to oppose the move as it would substantially eat into their earnings. And more into business news now. Africa's largest mobile operator, MTN, is planning to exit the Middle East to focus more on the African continent, with its first move to sell off its 75% stake in MTN Syria. The company is looking to exit these markets in the next 3 to 5 years. Here's a report.
Africa's largest mobile operator and South African telecom giant, MTN, announced Thursday it would pull out of the Middle East, exiting its assets in an orderly fashion in the medium term, in order to concentrate on its Pan-African strategy and resolving to simplify its portfolio. The group will scrap its interim dividend under a blueprint to navigate the coronavirus pandemic, which posed an unprecedented socio- and macroeconomic challenge, rendering trading conditions difficult. Nevertheless, in a statement, CEO Rob Shuter mentioned strong results during this period, singling out great performances in Nigeria, Ghana, and home-based South Africa. The first step towards its new entrepreneurial direction is to sell its 75% stake in MTN Syria. MTN's Middle Eastern assets contributed less than 4% to the group's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization in the first half ended June 30th.
In international stories now, President Vladimir Putin has said that Russia has become the first country in the world to grant regulatory approval to a COVID-19 vaccine after less than 2 months of human testing, a move that has been hailed by Moscow as evidence of its scientific prowess. Putin's daughter received the first COVID vaccine. The development paves the way for the mass inoculation of the Russian population, even as the final stage of the clinical trials to test safety and efficacy continues. The speed at which Russia is moving to roll out its vaccine highlights its determination to win the global race for an effective product. It has stirred concerns, however, that it may be putting the national prestige before sound science and safety. Speaking at the government meeting on state television, Putin said that the vaccine developed by Moscow's Gamaleya Institute was safe and that it had even been administered to one of his daughters. Russian health workers treating COVID-19 patients will be offered the chance of volunteering to be vaccinated soon after the vaccine's approval. More than 100 possible vaccines are being developed around the world to try and stop the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the World Health Organization, there are 220 vaccine candidates in development at the moment. 13 are in clinical trials, 5 in China, 3 in the United States, 2 in the United Kingdom. At least 4 are in the final phase 3 of human trials. And with that, we'll take a very short break. This is Galaxy Prime. Do stay with us. More news and updates after the break.
Hello. Being a legal practitioner in South Africa in these challenging times demands lawyers that will help clients beyond legal issues. The ever-changing demands in commerce and tourism require lawyers who have sound and clear business and commercial knowledge. And that's where MB Chabangu Incorporated comes in. Our business, mining, tourism, health, labor, and economic knowledge encapsulated with law and litigation experience gives us an advantage in the legal sphere. Our experience in assisting businesses, government, and various industries with their needs puts us amongst the many progressive and striving law firms in South Africa. Now, to contact our attorneys for assistance with any of the mentioned fields and others, please call us on 012-341-4187 or send us an email on admin@chabangu.co.za. MB Chabangu Incorporated, where problems meet solutions.
Violence and sexual abuse against children has become a major social challenge during the COVID-19 lockdown. We appeal to adults, parents, and caregivers to be kind towards children during this lockdown and beyond. Give children the space they need to engage with their reading and learning activities. Do not hit them. Do not yell at them. They are equally frustrated. We urge you to listen, support, and help the children to survive the COVID-19 lockdown. Report immediately any incident of sexual abuse. The Department of Basic Education. Every child is a national asset.
Feel the heat. Feel the excitement. Feel the heat with StarSat. Feel the heat.
Hold on. To make it through this journey alive, you're gonna need someone to teach you the ninja way.
Don't just stand there, kill someone!
Feel the excitement. Feel the heat with StarSat.
China's saying that the latest outbreak is under control.
Feel the heat.
The cabinet has decided to ease restrictions on certain other economic activities.
I don't want to be a white person who sits by and does nothing, so that's why I'm here today.
Feel the excitement.
We are here to unite, because what we are fighting for is to stop institutional racism.
Feel the heat with StarSat.
The coronavirus outbreak.
Experience the extraordinary.
Tremendous waste and tremendous fraud.
Mexico is, in fact, you will soon find out.
It is a day to celebrate.
We don't approve at all what's going on.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily unusual.
Challenge your ordinary.
Not only the government, the municipality here has had no plan.
Experience the extraordinary with StarSat. Feel the heat.
You said you love me.
I do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Leave my house right now. Oh, no, you don't. Get out of my way. Get out.
That is an abomination. Oh, the love you promised me.
Do you have a boyfriend? Yeah?
Feel the excitement.
You don't know how I've been longing for this.
Feel the heat with StarSat.
The day will come when these measures are no longer needed. Until then, however, we must ensure that all our people receive adequate support. We look ahead to a better future. I have faith in the strength and the resilience of ordinary South Africans who have proven time and time again throughout our history that they can rise to any challenge that is presented to our country. We shall recover. We shall overcome.
God is so amazing.
Feel the heat.
The Bible says that through his death on the cross, we are now reconciled with our Father.
Forgive and you shall be forgiven.
So wherever God takes us, we're just excited about it.
As a child of God, where you are, you must have an hour of prayer.
Feel the excitement.
In the name of Jesus, in the name of Jesus.
I believe that God is working right now.
Feel the heat with StarSat.
And a warm welcome back to the program, Galaxy Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. We certainly appreciate it. It's just gone 6:30 p.m. Central African time. My name is Audrey Chimwanda Twala. We continue with our news and updates now. Des van Rooyen, the minister with the shortest stint at the National Treasury in South Africa, opened his testimony today at the State Capture Inquiry with a 20-minute political speech. Van Rooyen requested that the Commission expand its terms of reference to look into the influence of white monopoly capital on the South African democratic state. He further said it was worrisome that everyone associated with the former president Jacob Zuma was painted as corrupt. Van Rooyen said that a state capture commission with extended terms of reference would reveal that it was white monopoly capital that had captured the state. An example provided by Van Rooyen, which he believed gave credence to this, was that many officials who work for the National Treasury are absorbed in the corporate South Africa when they leave government. Van Rooyen says that white monopoly capital, which he claimed influenced the outcome of the ANC Nasrec conference in 2017, was having a free ride. The Gauteng High Court in Pretoria has reviewed and set aside the findings made by Advocate Terry Modau and the Werksmans attorneys against ANC Limpopo Treasurer Denny Msiza. On Tuesday, the court ruled that Modau's failure to afford Msiza's right to procedural fairness before they released the report on the VBS was unlawful, unconstitutional, and it violated his constitutional rights. In the VBS report titled The Great Bank Heist, Msiza was alleged to have used his political influence to convince mayors and municipal officials from at least 10 Limpopo municipalities to invest hundreds of millions of rands in the now collapsed bank. The ANC Limpopo Treasurer General Denny stepped aside from his position after court papers were filed that seemed to show that he had personally benefited from wide-scale fraud at the VBS Mutual Bank. This comes in the wake of a resolution taken by the party's National Working Committee confirming its Integrity Committee's report, which recommended that Msiza should vacate the position. The city of Tshwane will be embarking on a 20-day testing and screening campaign in a bid to curb COVID-19 infections. As part of the ward-based outreach program campaign, the screening and testing at Blood Street Mall will be done every day from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for 20 days. The city will also be extending the campaign to Gomora Informal Settlement near Hercules from tomorrow, as well as the WF Nkomo Village Mall near Southville from Thursday. The last venue for the city's awareness and the testing efforts will be along Helen Joseph Street from Monday. Tshwane Head Administrator Mpho Nawa said the COVID-19 operational plan is aimed at raising awareness about the pandemic, as well as to test and to screen as many people as possible across the 7 affected regions of Tshwane. He said that so far the city had conducted screening and testing in most of the identified hotspots in all of its 7 regions, and they would continue to revisit some of the areas as and when the need arises. Now, the latest statistics released by the Gauteng Department of Health are indicating that the city has the second highest number of active cases in the province, surpassed only by the city of Johannesburg. And as of Sunday, the total number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the province stood at 192,767, with 143,068 recoveries. There have been 2,579 deaths. Now we'll take a very short break. When we come back, we'll speak live to Mr. Septi Bukula. He is into the financing of small to medium enterprises. We'll speak to him about how some of these enterprises have been able to, what they can look forward to past COVID-19 era. So do stay with us. We'll be back after this.
Violence and sexual abuse against children has become a major social challenge during the COVID-19 lockdown. We appeal to adults, parents and caregivers to be kind towards children during this lockdown and beyond. Give children the space they need to engage with their reading and learning activities. Do not hit them. Do not yell at them. They are equally frustrated. We urge you to listen, support and help the children to survive the COVID-19 lockdown. Report immediately any incident of sexual abuse. The Department of Basic Education. Every child is a national asset.
Feel the heat. Feel the excitement. Feel the heat with StarSat. Feel the heat.
Hold on. To make it through this journey alive, you're gonna need someone to teach you the ninja way.
Don't just stand there, kill someone!
Feel the excitement. Feel the heat with
Very good evening to you and a warm welcome back to Galaxy Prime to all of viewers across the continent. It's such a pleasure to be in your company once again. My name is Audrey Chimwanda Twala. We'll take a look at our other topical stories today. Just before the break, I promised you that we'll be speaking to Mr. Septi Bukula. He is involved in the risk management policies and procedures. He'll be speaking to us about how that can be utilized going forward. A lot of businesses are suffering. People are saying they're not getting financing from banks. Mr. Bukula, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Good evening, ma'am, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for your patience. I know we made you wait for quite a bit there. We had a bit of issues. We appreciate you being able to speak. Still, take your time to speak with us. Talk to us about the risk management policies that you look into and the procedures that entails.
Well, actually, as I mentioned, my area of specialization is small business policy research and analysis. And one of the areas that we look at, of course, in terms of our research, is the financing of small businesses by a whole range of players, all the way from commercial banks to development finance institutions and other players in between. And of course, when those institutions are looking at extending credit or a range of other financing instruments to small business, they do their own independent risk assessment. And what is paramount in their minds is the ability of the particular small business to be able to repay the facility, the financing facility that is extended to them. And they would look at a whole range of issues in relation to that. First and foremost, they would look at the candidate, the person, the entrepreneur, him or herself behind the business. They would look at the viability of the business because the ability to repay the facility is dependent on the viability of the business. They would look at the sector that the business is involved in and see whether it's a sector where there are growth opportunities and growth prospects for that business. So all in all, they're really looking at, the sustainability of the business and the ability of the business to service the facility that has been extended to them. They use very sophisticated models, very sophisticated risk assessment tools in order to come to that decision.
Now, we take a look at a lot of small businesses. There is some kind of funding that the government has availed to them to try to make sure that they sustain themselves. It's supposed to be dispersed by the banks of South Africa. A lot of them are saying they're not being able to get access to that bank. Will that be perhaps because their risk assessment says that they are too much of a risk, they have no collateral? Would that be the case?
Well, look, the unfortunate part, and of course, commercial banks are private businesses, they are for-profit entities. But the unfortunate part is that when government creates a risk mitigation mechanism like a credit guarantee, that's what a credit guarantee is supposed to be. It's supposed to it's to mitigate the risk that is perceived by the lender on the part of the small business development. The unfortunate part, of course, is that some of these private sector institutions still go on and use exactly the same risk assessment that they would have used in the absence of a credit guarantee, which actually defeats the whole purpose of having a credit guarantee. Because a credit guarantee says in the event that this facility that we are extending to this entrepreneur goes bad, in other words, if this entrepreneur is unable to pay back this facility that we're extending to them, the credit guarantee mechanism kicks in. That's why it's called a risk mitigation measure. It kicks in and enables the entity that extended the facility to defray a large part, actually, of the facility that was extended to the SME. But if the credit guarantee is not seen by the institutions that are targeted for the use of the credit guarantee as a measure that helps them to mitigate the risk and therefore increase the credit extension to SMEs, it defeats the purpose of having a credit guarantee. This particular credit guarantee scheme that we have under COVID-19 is not the first one we've had in the country. we've had another one before, and it worked on exactly the same principles.
So would it then help perhaps to have a nationalized reserve bank to do this kind of work, because it appears the private banks don't seem to be able to implement the policies that you speak of in a fair manner when it comes to equity?
Well, I would not advocate for that's a different conversation, the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, because actually it is not even the Reserve Bank.
Well, not necessarily the Reserve Bank, sir, but some kind of a national bank. That's what I'm trying to allude to.
Oh, sorry. So you're not talking about the South African Reserve Bank?
Not.
Well, look at it this way. I mean, we have development finance institutions here, which, in the absence of a state bank, so to speak, are supposed to be actually playing that role. I mean, dedicated to small businesses, you have the Small Enterprise Finance Agency in the South African context specifically. We have the South African and the Small Enterprise Finance Agency. We have the National Empowerment Fund, NEF, and then, of course, at a higher level, we have the Industrial Development Corporation and a whole range of our other provincial development finance institutions. So these entities are there. Yes, we don't have a state bank like, may exist in other places, but these development finance institutions are in place, and there's actually quite a range of them. And one of the complaints, so to speak, that has been raised in terms of or in relation to development finance institutions is that they operate in pretty much the same way as private sector commercial banks operate, which defeats the purpose, of having development financial institutions. And so the argument, for instance, that we've been making recently is that the credit guarantee scheme, the COVID-19 credit guarantee scheme, should also be extended to development finance institutions so that they can also use it as a risk mitigator to extend credit. But importantly, and maybe this is where we should lay emphasis, there's a whole range of non-bank financial institutions. They're smaller institutions, but they are specialized in small business. They focus exclusively on small businesses. And I think that where we should be looking is not so much at the private banks, and I'm not saying that the private commercial banks don't have a role to play. They have an important role to play. So I should not be misunderstood. But there's a whole tier of institutions called the non-bank finance institutions who are focused almost exclusively on extending financing to small businesses, and especially in our South African context, to Black-owned small businesses, because they are the ones who really struggle to access finance. And I think that, we should be paying more attention to those types of institutions and partnering with them. They understand the Black small business market perhaps a lot better than commercial banks. And I think we should be focusing on them if we want to unlock financing for small business at a much larger scale.
Your work within the tourism industry is quite prolific, Mr. Bukula. Of course, with your company, Osipa Management. Going forward, coming out of this COVID-19 era, we know they've taken quite a hit. What would be some of the policies or suggestions that you think would be worthy to look at going forward?
Yes, no, indeed. The tourism industry as a whole has really taken perhaps the biggest hit from COVID-19. Tourism was the first to close down when people started traveling. It probably will be the last to open up because it depends on people traveling. And so the devastation of COVID-19 in tourism has really been significant. We have been saying, and you correctly point out, I actually head up a network that we call CZA Tourism SME Network, where we deal with tourism SMEs across the country. We have been advocating under that network that, going forward, government cannot approach, and other players, and I'm not just singling out government, cannot approach the development of SMEs in exactly the same fashion that has been done before. For instance, recently, the Portfolio Committee on Tourism in Parliament called for public submissions in terms of how tourism going forward, as we work on recovery, can be made more inclusive of small businesses, of communities, and a whole range of players. And we've put out a number of proposals in terms of what we believe should be done, both at policy level and also at enterprise level. To give an example, for instance, we've said that a lot more needs to be done to help SMEs to embrace technology, digital technology, a lot more than, tourism is a very traditional industry, but at the same time, parts of tourism actually have been at the cutting edge of technology. If you look at, you can book your trip online, you can check yourself in online, tourism has actually, parts of it have been on the cutting edge of technology. We are then saying that, a much stronger effort should go into making sure that all of tourism, including the very traditional elements of it, are enabled and assisted to embrace and deploy technology a lot more. That's just one example. But even the instruments that government, the financing, the incentive instruments that government has put in place traditionally to support tourism need to be re-looked at to say, how do we make these instruments fit for purpose? Because they've been deployed in a very traditional way, in a very non-customized way. And we're saying, that's not you offer support going forward. Instruments need to be customized. They need to be flexible. They need to be a lot more responsive to the support needs of enterprises and entrepreneurs. So we've put forward a whole range of proposals in terms of how we help tourism as a whole, but small tourism businesses in particular, to recover from COVID-19 and the lockdown and operate more successfully going forward.
Quite insightful. Speaking with one voice, the role of Small and Medium Growers Association in driving change in the South African forest sector. Could you speak to us a bit more about that?
Well, that was work that we did some time ago in the forestry sector.
I know, I did my homework.
And by the way, well, I'm glad somebody's still looking at it and still referring to it, because we actually, what we said then in that publication is exactly what we still say.
Yes, that's why I actually mentioned it.
But in relation,
yes, because I can see the similarities there.
We want to, what we're advocating there is that, SMEs can also help their own cause by acting more in concert, more collectively, more collaboratively than, individually. And this afternoon, actually, I hosted a tourism SME webinar with the Northern Cape Tourism Authority. And the question came from SMEs in terms of how can we improve our ability to work with government? I said, well, I think one way, and I'm not going to claim that this is the only way, but one way of really improving your ability to work, not just with government, but a whole range of other players, is to act collaboratively. And then the point that we're making in Speaking with One Voice, our publication, was that SMEs and entrepreneurs need to really find ways to collaborate more and not compete all the time. There are ways that, because we're running private businesses, so we're competitive by nature. But there are areas where you compete, but there are certainly areas where you collaborate. For instance, if SMEs in a particular sector collectively identify their support needs, and instead of approaching the various players who can help them respond to those support needs, approaching them individually, there is a case for collaboration in certain areas. There's a case for collaboration in marketing. There's a case for collaboration in building your internal capabilities. There's a case for collaboration in a whole range of areas. And what we are doing as the network, and what we did in the forestry SME sector, is to advocate for greater collaboration, where entrepreneurs sit together and say, where can we work collaboratively, and where can we compete? And there's room, for both of those. Some people have even coined a phrase called co-opetition, which means you cooperate sometimes and you compete sometimes.
Right.
It's perfectly valid. And we're encouraging entrepreneurs and small businesses to really embrace a lot more collaborative approaches to doing business.
I find that to be quite interesting because I'm looking at just going forward, with the different industries, not only specific industries collaborating, say the transport industry, the hospitality industry, coming together in some sort of a way to collaborate, to try and really come out of this era and be able to survive. Do you think that's something that can be looked at as well? I know some of them were already doing it before the COVID-19 era, but to be even more innovative going forward?
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot less collaboration in the South African context. But if, we've looked at tourism, experiences in other parts of the world where, if we talk about tourism specifically for now, where tourism enterprises have actually come together and collaborated to overcome a particular challenge and position themselves competitively in the market internationally. And one example that I like to cite is that of Colombia. Now, what comes to mind first when you think about Colombia? Well, it's drug wars, right? Nobody wanted to go to Colombia because, oh my God, I'm going to be ducking those, gun battles.
Yes, the first thing you think of is drug warlords. Yes.
Exactly. It was seen as a very risky place. But what happened is that, tourism enterprises, of different sizes came together and a whole range, not just enterprises, by the way, a whole range of players in government, associations, and said, hey, how do we overcome this international image? We have a beautiful country here to present to the world. But, the sticking point is that we are seen as this place where you duck, guns and bullets on the streets. And they came together in a collaborative way and mapped out strategies to deal with the issue of crime, the reality of crime, but also the perception of crime, of conflicts and crime, yes, indeed. And then came up with a strategy to go to the world market and position themselves. And, tourism started thriving in Colombia and people started coming in. I'm one of those people who can't wait to go to Colombia because of the way that they position themselves as a destination in the world, and the only way they could do it was through collaboration. In South African context is cutthroat competition, to an extent where, quite frankly, we cut our noses to spite our own faces. Instead of saying, where are those areas where we can collaborate as a destination? We're a beautiful destination, South Africa. Collaborate as a destination to present this destination to the world, and not just see each other through the eyes of competition all the time. I think we need to go beyond just viewing one another as competitors and see ourselves collectively as a single destination that we need to collaborate to present to the world. Beautiful destination we have,
Absolutely.
But some challenges to be overcome that we can only overcome through collaboration rather than competition.
Mr. Bukula, those are quite invaluable insights that you've imparted today. Thank you so much for that. We certainly appreciate it. I'm sure if there are any business leaders that are out there, entrepreneurs who are listening, they were able to take away quite a bit from the conversation that we had today. We'll have to leave it there for now as we're about to hit the top of the hour, 7 p.m. Central African time. This is Galaxy Prime. We'll be back with more news and updates after this. Just stay with us.
Hello. Being a legal practitioner in South Africa in these challenging times demands lawyers that will help clients beyond legal issues. The ever-changing demands in commerce and tourism require lawyers who have sound and clear business and commercial knowledge, and that's where MB Chabangu Incorporated comes in. Our business, mining, tourism, health, labor, and economic knowledge encapsulated with law and litigation experience gives us an advantage in the legal sphere. Our experience in assisting businesses, government, and various industries with their needs puts us amongst the many progressive and striving law firms in South Africa. Now, to contact our attorneys for assistance with any of the mentioned fields and others, please call us on 012-341-4187 or send us an email on admin@chabangu.co.za. MB Chabangu Incorporated, where problems meet solutions.